Good morning. And y'all can do better than that. Huh? Good morning. All right, that's good to know. Glad to know you're out there. Was that a pretty good video? All right. Okay, so with that being said, we're going to go to our next video. Our next speaking part. My name is Martin Watson. I'm with Greenville County Human Relations. I am the Fair Housing Coordinator and with a lot of other things that we do. But just so glad to have you here today. One of the biggest things we talk about when it comes to fair housing is being treated equally. And with equally, that means everybody being treated the same. As you know, when it comes to renting, that is one of the biggest things that you find the discrepancy in when it comes to renting, and that's with the tenants as well as the landlords. So one of the things I found out when I get a lot of complaints on a regular basis about landlord-tenant issues where the tenant is complaining about the landlord is not sure what to do, but with everything, it comes with respect. You agree? And respect starts at home. And as they say, you can get a whole lot of stuff with honey rather than vinegar, right? Okay, so maintaining a good relationship with your tenants, how to avoid this discrimination. And that's one of the biggest things you want to make sure of, that you avoid discrimination. Because once you get a complaint of discrimination, a lot of times it comes to me. I have to fill out these long forms. I have to make sure everybody's right, making sure that it is a form of discrimination and not a form of just bad processing. Okay? So, with that, as I stated, the first thing is forming a good relationship. So, having bad days. Everybody's have had bad days, am I correct? And bad days basically usually flow over to others. Okay? So just picture you're having a bad day as say a property manager, and then someone comes in to basically talk to you about problems. The first thing that's going to happen, if you're having a bad day, it's going to flow over, am I right? It's going to flow over, and then that person's going to have a bad day. And when that happens, everybody has a bad day because that person now has taken on that, and now their attitude has changed, which now it comes to be a conflict. And the conflict has become to be a complaint. Okay? So, first thing you want to always, and this is basically tied to the landlord and tenant, how to make everybody's day better. So, first thing you want to do when you're talking to anybody, you want to make sure you have a warm greeting. Hi, how are you? You doing okay today? Great. Did that make you feel better? Or better yet, yeah, what do you want? Huh? Now, how does that make you feel? What do you want to say to that person? Exactly. So warm greetings are always the best thing, okay? Show them that you care. You may not care. But, the point is, it's what you show, okay? Because they're going to remember the last thing you say to them, whether it's thank you or get out, right? Okay. Smile. Definitely smiling. My dad used to tell me that it doesn't hurt anyone to smile, but it definitely takes a lot more muscles to frown. Okay? Anybody ever heard that? Okay. So how do we address him or her when they first come in the office? Never refer to your tenant by their first name. Why is that? You always do that because it just shows you a sense of respect. And I would like to be respected. You like to be respected? All right. So, if in doubt, don't be afraid to ask them, how would you like to be addressed? Okay? That is not a problem. And, being in this society, that's the right thing to do because then you won't have to worry about, did I offend that person? You ask them exactly how they wanted to be addressed, and you remember that. Because if they come back in and you do not address them like they asked to be addressed, they're going to remember it. Okay? So, one of the biggest things we find with this is arguing among landlord and tenants. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Ah, Judge Duckett. She sees that in her court. Ah, but arguments never end well. Okay? When a tenant is angry, don't argue with them. One of the biggest things you can do is when they're talking loud, you talk soft. Because, see, you don't need to go to their level. They need to come down to yours. Okay? When I say go to their level, I mean in volume. And believe it or not, the softer you talk, the calmer a person end up getting. Okay? So you do want to make sure that the tenant's anger doesn't flow over. Listen to them, because a lot of times a person angry, they just want you to listen to what they have to say. But as human beings, we always want to interject before we finish listening, right? That's just normal. That's just normal. But I guarantee you, if you listen to them and let them talk, because there's been times when you jump in, they'll say, could you just let me speak? Am I right? Okay. So those are the things you want to definitely make sure of, that you're basically giving them the opportunity to speak. Don't brush off their concerns. You wouldn't want anybody to brush off anything that you're thinking about, even though it might be minor. You're thinking it's minor, but to them it may be major. Okay? For instance, can you make sure nobody parks in my parking spot that is handicapped? Okay, now that sounds minor. Yeah, we can do that, but you never do it. But the same person has one leg, okay, and can't get around, and they need that spot. So you see how major that is to them, where it's minor to us, right? Okay. As I state in a calming voice, let them know you understand, and you can basically repeat that. I understand what you're saying, so let them know you're listening. Point out the reasons which led them to your office, okay? You basically, if you're telling them to come to your office to speak to them, let them know why. One of the things, if you tell them up front, then they don't feel like they're coming in trouble for a violation or anything, okay? Those are the things you want to do as a manager, okay? As a manager talking to your landlord, because you're here to cultivate a good relationship. Am I right? And if you have a good relationship with your tenant, that tenant is going to be a good tenant. Okay? Now, don't go overboard and start doing things with that tenant that you wouldn't do with other tenants. Then we have a problem. Okay? So, you want to make sure you're cultivating a good relationship. Work out solutions to prevent the problem from occurring from the start. And always, when I say work out solutions, talk to them. You guys come up with a solution together. If a person is paying their rent late, always, and you just basically constantly charging them late fees, did anyone ever ask why that person always pays late? Could it be that person is getting SSI? And as you know, rent is due on the 1st. And if 5 days pass, then you start the eviction process. Or it's late and you're charging anywhere from $25, $50 to $100 late fee. And this person is on SSI and they get their check late, which is the 15th of the month. They can't pay because they're on a fixed income. Did anyone ever ask to say, why do you pay your rent late? Don't be an agency of just collecting cash, be an agency of helping your tenant, okay? So if that situation is that the person gets their check on the 15th, there's things called reasonable accommodations that can be made for that person to be able to pay their rent late, okay? And that's part of the Fair Housing Act, that they have what they call a reasonable accommodations that can be made. But if no one ever asks, no one ever knows, right? Correct? All right. The other thing is, how do you feel about documentation? Tell me, anybody? You love it. Yeah, right. Well, documentation is what's going to cover you, okay? Because believe it or not, the tenants sometimes document now. And I've seen things where the tenants document things and the landlord or the property manager didn't document. Have you ever seen that in your courtroom? Ah, yes. So it's very important that you document everything, okay? Explain the rules. Walk, don't run. Explain what you can lead to infractions. Make sure they understand and allow for questions. Always be courteous. How many of you actually go over the lease with your tenant? That's good. How many of you just give them the lease and say, sign here? Well, let me give you a little bit of information. A lot of times your tenant is in desperate need of a place. They're just happy to be able to see that there's someone that's going to take them in as a tenant. So at that point, they sign anything. Unfortunately, they don't read the lease, okay? It'll behoove you to make sure that that person understands what they're signing. A lot of you may say, hey, that's not my job to make sure they understand. My job is to give it to them. But if they understand, wouldn't it be a lot less problems for you, far as knowing that they know the infractions, they know what could cause infractions, they know if they're late, how much they're going to be charged. Those are some of the biggest things that we run into, far as they're charging me all this money and I think they're discriminating against me. What's the first thing you think I ask? Where is your lease? Where is your lease? But I'm not on a lease anymore because my lease ran out and I'm going month to month. Ooh, so you're not on a lease. Well, I hate to break this to you, but you're still on a lease. And that lease comes from the previous lease you have. It just now, it's not on paper, but you still have to follow the same ones. So explain what leads to the infractions. It probably would save a lot of the time that you run into. Allow for them to ask questions. Don't just give it to them and just say, here it is, okay? And always, what did I say about respect? Always be respectful and courteous. So, how many of you actually meet with your tenants on a regular basis? Or just when they have problems? Well, we want you to have a monthly meeting with your tenants because when you have a monthly meeting, you can find out what's going on in their lives, okay? Because just because when they first came in to rent from you, life changes, okay? Life changes. You don't know if they have a sick child that caused them to be late on their rent. You don't know if someone died or whatever. You need to be able to acclimate certain situations by just listening to them, okay? Create newsletters. Let them know what's going on in the apartment. Keep them informed. Invite suggestions from the tenants. The more people that are involved in living in your facility, they feel like now they're a part and they have a say. Don't just be a place to house people. Make that housing their home, okay? Have an open door policy. Okay, let's stop right there. Open door policy not always a good thing. But let them know that you're willing to talk to them. If you have to set up an appointment with them, let them know that you're open to listening to their complaints or whatever. Okay? Okay, let's talk about maintenance. Let's try that again. Let's talk about maintenance. Ooh. All right, so maintenance is a major part. In Greenville, we have some of the highest complaints when it comes to, and it's not just Greenville, it's all over. A lot of people have all of a sudden decided they want to be landlords, but don't really know the responsibility of a landlord. Okay? A lot of people have come and says, I'm just going to buy this land up and just sit and let people rent from me. But it comes a big responsibility as a landlord. Okay? And it comes a big responsibility as a tenant when it comes to these things. So, how many do you have as landlords? How many have systems of reporting work orders? Is it in writing? Or is it just, hey, John, I got a stopped up toilet. Can you come by and fix it? No? Okay. Well, you want to make sure you have everything, a system for that. But some people have systems but don't work the system. What I mean is, you may have a system, you get a work order, and that's all it is, a work order. Nobody goes back to see if it's been done. Nobody follows up on it. And then, therefore, here I get the calls again. So and so is not work. They're not fixing anything. They take my rent, but they don't fix anything. How would you guys feel if that was happening to you? Wouldn't be good, would it? So therefore, it's good to have a system of reporting work orders. Okay? Try to have a minimum time of execution of all work orders. Okay? Because the sooner you get it fixed, the better the landlord feels. And not only that, if you have a leaky faucet or leaky pipe in your apartment and it's been a work order's been put in, you don't get around to it about 3 or 4 weeks. I've seen months. Now, what has happened? That leaky pipe has caused mold, wood rot, and now you have a bigger problem far as having to actually fix something that you didn't have before. So, try to make sure you have a minimal time executing all work orders. And one of the bigger things is get back with that tenant in reference to work orders. Let them know that you got it and that you're working on it. Now, granted, everything is not going to be able to be fixed in one day. But if you know that and the tenant knows that, it's less likely they're going to have anxiety wondering if you're going to fix it or not. If they see you working on it, what are they going to say? Ooh, I got a great landlord. Even though he can't fix it now or she can't fix it now, they're basically working on it, making sure that it's getting done. And keep them updated on it. Okay? And you can do that in writing as well. And the other thing is, the biggest thing that's going to get you in trouble is doing favors for a tenant and not doing it for everybody else. Don't you worry, Miss Sue, I'm going to take care of you. Don't you tell nobody. Well, I'm going to tell you what Miss Sue going to do. Miss Sue going to go and say, girl, I got my water heater fixed and got a new washing machine and everything. But don't you tell nobody, I told you. Then it gets around to the whole apartment complex, right? Gets around to everybody. Now, Miss Sue just made you enemy number one because here is petitions and everything else saying that you're doing things for one person and not doing it for the other. And what is that considered? In some places, favoritism, and could turn into discrimination, right? There's more paperwork for me. So make sure you treat everyone the same, okay? So, professionalism. That's a big word. Professionalism. So, keeping it professional. First one, do not get involved with your tenants on a personal level. We've seen that before. It ended up leading to sexual harassment, quid pro quo. Okay? Make sure you keep everything on a professional level. Do not flirt with your tenants. I know some of you saying, you know, you're just saying hi, doc. You know, South Carolina is kind of different. You know, South Carolina is kind of different because, honey, darling, you know, that's normal for South Carolinians. That's a term of endearment, right? But if I'm a tenant and you say, honey, and I'm behind on my rent, you see what I'm saying? Honey, don't you worry about it, you know. And I'm behind on my rent, I'm going to take that as an invitation. So, you know, make sure you keep everything across the board whenever a situation you're dealing with tenants. And that goes for maintenance people when they go in. So strange things happen with maintenance sometimes. First thing, you've got a work order, and that you're supposed to go over to Miss Lillian's house and fix it. Now, Miss Lillian, she's single, okay? But you're the maintenance worker. You looking all nice and everything, you know. So you go over there and you just walk in. Violation already. I can see this going bad already. We want to make sure anytime you're going into another unit, you always knock. How many times? 3 times. Huh? Yes, we're going to get that. Make sure you announce yourself, because 3 times, that could be the popo. And even the popo lets you know they're coming. So we're no better. We need to make sure that we knock on the door 3 times to let them know that maintenance is here. If the door opens, shout 3 times that maintenance is here. Now, that is only if you have the work order and you're going over there and nobody's there, but the door is open to go in, or you unlock the door and they know that you're coming to fix something. Even though you may not think anybody's there, you shout out maintenance 3 times, because that person could be there and be in the shower, right? If someone comes to the unit in stage of undress, that's Miss Lillian now. Okay? She only comes in a house coat or whatever. Do not enter that unit. Okay? You let Miss Lillian know. I'll come back later. Okay? All right? You make sure you keep everything above board, because this is the major things that can get you in trouble. Not only get you in trouble, but get your whole apartment company in trouble, because these goes back. A sexual harassment can go back not only to the person who's committed it, but it can go back to the company. So the whole point is to keep you out of trouble, as well as your company, right? Okay. So never go in a tenant's unit alone if he or she is problematic. Why do you think that is? Exactly. If there's already a problematic person, they're going to basically if anything that doesn't go the way they want it to go, they're going to say you did something. Whether you did it or not, they're going to say it. Always have someone with you. Okay? Do not touch, embrace, or say anything suggestive. Don't give a hug. Don't say anything out the way, because people can take it totally different than what you expected or meant to give. So you want to make sure you always keep it professional. Okay? Get involved. Now, that's not get involved with your tenant. Okay? We just went over that. Now, everybody good? Everybody good on that? That does not mean get involved with your tenant. If possible, have programs with the tenant and their children. So what does that do when you have programs with the tenant and the children? Come on. Community builds a sense of community. What else? Familiarity. You say it again. Yeah, okay, that's good. Anyway, getting familiar with everyone, because you want to build that sense of community. And therefore, if you're out there they see that you're part of the community, you're part of their, and not the kind of person that's always only there on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they can never get in contact with you, they feel a whole lot better knowing that they're living in a great community. Walk around the property. Don't just stay in the office, okay? Because if you stay in the office, they're going to say, well, we never see so-and-so, okay? But if you're walking around that property, they see that you care. And not only just walk around the property, speak to your tenants. Say hello. Ask them how's the day going. Anything going on with the family. Get involved with your tenants. Walking around the property, stop and talk, as I stated, stop and talk with your tenants. And talk about positive things, okay? Don't let them come and tell you about the tenant beside you. You know they will. They definitely will talk about other tenants. And you say, well, let's focus on you today. I want to know how well you're doing today. They're going to give you complaints too. So make sure you refer that. Do not take the complaint right there. You tell them if there's a maintenance issue, make sure they put it in writing. Okay? Because you want to make sure that you have everything documented and that you can go back to it and follow up on it. Okay? Treat everyone the same. As I stated before, don't play favorites. This is one thing I do see a lot of times. Don't let certain tenants hang around the office. Okay? Don't let them just sit there and hang around the office. What I find out is that a lot of times, I know none of you guys do this, but a lot of times you have managers, property managers, who have, how would you say, deputized certain tenants to be spies. But we know that would not be anybody here, right? Because we get situations where they state that so-and-so, the landlord or the property manager, was telling Miss Tamitha, telling Tamitha's business about how much money she make, about different things. But you didn't hear from me, girl. You know how they do. But those are the things that happen when you start playing favorites. It digs a deep hole for you. And if you ever had to go to court, and it could turn out really bad if they have documentations where these things actually happen. So you want to make sure you don't play favorites with anyone. Is that fair enough? And if you don't play favorites, you can't be discriminating, can you? Okay? So if you have a bad attitude as a landlord or a property manager, and they know you have a bad attitude, you need to make sure you be equally bad. What I mean is, don't treat someone different than the other. And that's where I see policies come in, where a person say, this person talked to me like this. Well, do they talk to everybody like that? Then that means that's their attitude. But try to change the attitude if it is. But do not play favorites. So, with that being said, I am going to open the door to questions. Any questions? I'm not going to answer them, but I'm going to open the door to it.
Would you advise a landlord not to go into a house or an apartment if the tenant, to do work if the tenant is not there?
I would definitely advise the landlord not to go in, not, sorry, not to go into the house if the landlord, if the tenant is not aware of the work that needs to be done. And, you know, you've already explained to the tenant that you're going to be going in the house to do the work, so they'll know what to expect. The biggest thing that we run into when you do that is landlord or the property or maintenance person goes in the house and don't even know that they were supposed, even though they put that report or maintenance request in, it could have been 2 or 3 months ago, and then all of a sudden somebody's going in the house and they don't know it. Anytime a person enters the house or going to have they need to have a 24-hour notice that someone is going to be coming into the house to do maintenance. Okay? Yes, sir, ma'am.
Here I go. Well, you know, when we talk about stages of undress, we had a tenant, the maintenance man went by. He was a male, but he had on just his diaper and a tank top. How should he have handled that?
Far as the maintenance person, it's the same way. I'll come back when you're properly dressed.
And one other, when you got a tenant and you see that they're experiencing certain issues, mental issues, you know, and you have to be careful with that. But if you know this tenant and they're saying things like someone is in the attic and they're stealing their possessions, how deep involved do we get in that?
Well, when you're dealing with mental issue, that's a whole different animal. Unfortunately, that's getting to be a common thing. When you're dealing with mental health issues, that person is not going to be acting as a person that has no mental issue. First thing is being able to identify that, okay? Because if you don't identify it, you're going to make decisions that may be detrimental to that person as well as yourself, okay? So therefore, you're going to basically have to identify if that person is, and that's a good point, because that's when we talked about getting out to know the person. If you don't get out to know the person, you won't ever know that person has any mental issues. Am I right? So that's why you got to get involved with your tenants. I hope that answered your questions. You got to basically identify that person has mental issue, and then you work or adjust whatever you're doing to actually accommodate that person.
So we don't bring others involved?
It would be good if you know that person, but is that person already have somebody involved?
No,
Okay. Well, as a responsible steward, I would basically, try to would you get somebody help if they were bleeding? Okay, same thing. Mental health is a medical issue. Okay? So you want to get as many people that is knowledgeable about that. And I would suggest you first thing get the family members involved. okay? So that they can make sure not only did you get that person involved, but are they following up to make sure they're staying on their medication or whatever, okay? Yes, ma'am.
Can you remind the landlords to make sure whatever they put in their lease is lawful?
Yes.
As a judge, I've had people put in there, they cannot bear arms, they cannot have a gun on the premises. That's a constitutional right.
Right.
I cannot override that. They'll
Yes.
also put in there they don't have a right to a trial by jury. That's a constitutional right. And you know, landlords put, I mean, whatever they want in writing, we don't deny them that, but it
Exactly.
has to be lawful. I'm not gonna ask Alexander Hamilton to rewrite the Constitution just for his benefit. So
You're-
just remind them they must put everything, I know it has to be in writing, but make sure it's lawful.
You're right. I've seen some things where they just put, can I put this in? No, you know, because what happens is, as she stated, everything has to be above the law. You can't just make up things because, and I know a lot of things people think, well, a lot of the leases are designed for the landlord, to protect the landlord. But it also protects the tenant when used correctly. So that's what she was saying. Just because you want to protect yourself from certain things, that don't mean you can always put it in the lease. Okay? So everything that you put in, you make sure that it is legal. If you have doubt, seek an attorney, okay, to see if that lease is legal. All right, next.
My question is about maintenance. And to refer back to what you said about like a leaking faucet.
Yes.
And I do understand that some maintenance requests are emergencies. So, and the communication between the landlord and the tenant about, you know, we're working on it. But what's the time frame if you're having something leaking and they can't get to it right now? But what if it takes them a month to get to the leak? And then, of course, there has been other damage that has come from those leaks. So what's the time frame before you should reach out to like Greenville County Human Relations for?
When you start saying that, this is the biggest thing that you find. Remember I told you a lot of people are basically just becoming landlords overnight? Okay. And they don't realize when it comes to maintenance. I've heard situations, well, we would have fixed that, but our maintenance person we don't have one right now. I'm sure y'all heard that before. I'm sorry, we don't have a maintenance person right now. As soon as we get it, we'll get it fixed. But we got a leaking faucet over here that is just basically leaking, causing damage. And what's happening is, yes, the tenant is suffering, but the landlord is losing money because that house is just going down and when it comes to the damages that it's gonna cause. Now, what's gonna happen is that landlord is gonna come back and try to charge the tenant. Take pictures, make sure you have documentation. Now, when you say what is a reasonable time, I can't tell you what a reasonable time is, but I would like to say make it as minimal as possible. And then again, it's according to what the damage is or what the problem is, because everything is not gonna be fixed within a day. If you got a big mold problem, you're gonna have to eradicate the whole place, you're gonna have to tear down walls. That means you're gonna have to put these people up somewhere else so that you can do that. So I can't really give you a minimal time, but it should be as minimal as possible according to the situation. But in the meantime, the responsibility of the tenant is take pictures, document, make sure you have more than one request. If it took over a week, put another request in. If you got documentation and all of a sudden you decide you want to leave and there's a 14-day letter that you must fill out to start these complaints the right way, okay? So I guess the minimal time by fair housing rule is 14 days. You fill out a 14-day letter, you send it to you. It's two different types of 14-day letters. 14-day letter with intent to seek legal counsel or legal help, which means you can sue that landlord, or 14 days with intent to vacate. And if I leave because of something you did, I want my deposit back. and I'm gonna be looking for more money that caused me to be inconvenienced. So those are the things you must have. 14 days would be your, I guess, the minimal time, okay? Because you gotta give, when you're dealing with a 14-day letter, you gotta write the letter, and there's templates for that. You gotta write the letter, you gotta send it certified. Some places say you don't have to send it certified, you just gotta let them know. But I suggest you send it certified so you have a paper trail. Once that little card, delivery card comes back to say it was delivered, then you start counting 14 days. Not when you sent it, but when they received it. After that, then you can start reacting to what your intent was. Yes, sir. The question was, the tenant has a leak. Make sure I'm saying it right. The tenant has a leak, and it's been continually leaking. The tenant hasn't made any preparations to fix it. Okay? So the landlord isn't making any preparations to fix it. So it's going on for over a month. Now the tenant states, well, since you're not fixing it, I'm not paying you any rent. We've seen that before too. But that does not ride in South Carolina. There is a provision in the law that states that a tenant cannot withhold payment because repairs have not been done. That is a situation that needs to go to the court, and the only person that can say, that you don't have to pay would be a judge, and they would have what they call an escrow, where they actually would keep that money to when everything is come back and they say everything is right, and then they pay the landlord. But no, you cannot withhold funds because you have a repair that's not being met. So, okay, and this is gonna be our last questions, guys. The question is, the landlord had a leak in one of the units. The tenant had a leak in one of the units, and the leak has built up to a cost of $600. Okay, because the landlord hasn't fixed it. So, who pays the bill? Now, there's a certain type of leak. If it's a leak under the house and it's just running, there may be a situation where there's a busted pipe. And if there's a busted pipe, Greenville County Water Company, they will basically see that that water is not being dispersed where it's supposed to be and say, yes, it is a leak. But what's gonna have to happen, the landlord has to fix it first, and then the water company will give a credit for whatever that cost was. They would look at your past bills and see what it was, and then all of a sudden they see a $600 spike. Then they say, okay, we're gonna give you a credit, but only after the landlord has repaired the leak. Okay? Well, I thank you. I hope it was very informative. And, okay, we've gotta wrap it up. I'll be glad to talk to you, Ricky, afterwards, okay? All right. So, with that being said, y'all have a good day.